And good evening, everybody. Welcome to another Hoops HD bracket rundown. Trying to get our show straight here. I'm Chad Sherwood. First of all, with us, as always, is the NCAA puppet master himself, David Griggs.
Damn
David,
straight.
how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. I would just like to add that Tim Miles is his team is once again holding him back. I think Tim Miles should be in the bracket under the condition that his team doesn't have to come with him that we're about to go through. But I don't know. If it were just him out there, he'd be beating Wisconsin.
We have a new correspondent for Hoops HD with us tonight. First video podcast ever, I believe. Welcome, John.
That's correct. It is my first podcast. I'm
Yeah.
glad to be here tonight.
And John, are you streaming to us from Big Ten country just like I am here in New Jersey? Or?
Oh, shut up.
I'm streaming from the heart of Big East country, or at least
Big
the
East.
western half of it.
Ohio is now Big East country, and New Jersey is now Big Ten country. The basement is up in the attic.
I was completely shocked last night when we had ACC Big East Wednesday with Rutgers versus Maryland. I was trying to figure out why we had a non-conference game there, but apparently it was a conference game. And it's my school. I still don't even know what conference we're in. So, but getting to what our plan is for tonight, David and I just spent probably about the last 45 minutes to an hour putting together an S curve of the top, not only the top 68, but probably about the top, I don't know, about 84 actually teams in the country.
Yeah, including the Centenary winner, which is automatically on our list, for consideration, the way we do it here.
So what this list is really going to be is not only the teams we feel are in the tournament right now, but also teams that we feel are seriously under consideration.
Yes.
And it includes all of our automatic bids as well. What we're going to do is we're going to pull the list up on the screen. We're going to go through it, take a look at these teams, and John is going to tell us how crazy and stupid we are to have chosen these teams where they are.
Well, thankfully, DePaul is not going to be one of those teams.
Yeah, that is. We do not. I realize a lot of, and we've gotten to this. A lot of people that forecast the brackets, they do it as if the season was ending today, and as part of that philosophy, they use the current standings, even if the standings are 1-0 or 0-1, which is you see DePaul being projected in the field as an automatic bid, which is insane. We don't do that. We use a little more common sense, but yeah, DePaul did not make our field.
Yeah, and that is one of my biggest pet peeves about some of these bracketologists is, you're completely making your bracket into pretty much a fraud here because you have knocked two or three teams out in order to put in a DePaul, in order to put in a Tulsa as a champion of the American, and they're not. They're not even close to the best team in the American. They lost to Southeastern Oklahoma State.
Yes.
But anyhow, what I'm going to try to do here, if the technology will work right, and it won't.
This is exciting television we got here, Chad.
David, why don't you fill us in for a minute here while I try to figure out how to get this thing to work.
Okay, you had it before. But anyway, so John, you come to us from Cincinnati, right? While Chad's getting that to work. All right, before we get started, there's a lot of teams from that area. Cincinnati we love our mythical conferences here at Hoops HD. We've got the Beanpot, the Front Range, the Big Five. I wanted to get to this. Cincinnati has the makeup of what would be a fantastic mythical conference with Xavier, Cincinnati, Dayton, Wright State, Michigan, Northern Kentucky, which is a transitional team, and even Miami of Ohio. Yet almost none of those schools play each other. Why is that?
Well, about the only ones that are playing now would be Miami and whoever they are scheduled with. I think Wright State.
Yeah.
It's the mythical Miami Valley Conference.
Yeah. It should be, and it would be great. They should play every year. But anyway, I think Chad has figured it out. So
we have it on the screen, so instead of seeing my face, you can now see that, which means that I can now pick my nose where nobody can see me. Oh,
right. Yeah.
No, that is not happening. But we locked in here on my screen, hopefully.
Yeah, we are. This is exciting stuff here.
Okay. This is the S-curve. We start with, you can see the top 26 teams. We'll scroll down as we go through them. Teams in capitals are the teams we are projected to be the automatic bid winners.
Yeah.
Lowercase teams are the at-larges. Number one overall, we had a very slight debate about this Kentucky versus Virginia argument.
Yeah, Virginia's higher in some of the polls. Now, the thing is, okay, our one line, obviously, I don't know if you can highlight those or not, but 1 through 4, Kentucky, Virginia, Gonzaga, Nova. Yeah, they're, well, great job, Chad.
Kind of. I'm new at this computer stuff.
I mean, computers have been around since the, okay. I think matchup-wise, X's and O's, I think Virginia is the kind of team that would give Kentucky fits because of their pack line defense, because they can shoot from the outside, and because they can pass the ball. I mean, Kentucky would eat them up on the glass, but I do think Virginia is the kind of team that's equipped to beat a school like Kentucky. Kentucky this week, they squeaked by Missouri by about 50, but prior to that, they had gone two teams that are nowhere close to the bracket. Really took them to overtime. Were you rattled by that at all? Are there, you guys?
I'm not. I thought that those two Kentucky games were probably good for Kentucky. They showed them how to win a close game. They will get a close game sooner or later, even if they do get that mythical 40-0 mark.
I would probably say it's not the teams that so much that they're expected to beat, but it's the teams like you said, Texas A&M and Missouri. Well, not Missouri. They did blow them out, but there was A&M and one other team that they.
It was Ole Miss.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, it was just kind of surprising that they struggled. But you got the sense that Kentucky was kind of sleepwalking through those games. So.
Also, okay. on this one line here, we have this Gonzaga team now with Duke having fallen twice now. Arizona with a couple losses, Wisconsin with a bad loss at Rutgers. I think this Gonzaga team is pretty much a shoo-in for a 1 seed, barring an upset, and I think any game they lose the rest of the season is a major upset. So.
Right, and again, if you look at their overall wins, they don't have any high-power ones. But as we saw last year, I mean, if you have a bloated record, with which Wichita State did, they can end up on the one line. Their best win is probably still at St. John's. They did win at BYU. They won handily at UCLA, which arguably may not have been that good. But the thing is, I think on the court, and we say this every year, it seems like Gonzaga comes in the March and goes out early. But on the court, this Gonzaga team's awesome. They really had a chance to beat. Their only loss was at Arizona in overtime, who's also very close to the top of the list. So I like them. And then Villanova, the Big East is stronger this year, I think, than it was last year. That it's been ever since it's gone to this form. Well, this is only the second year. So Nova is really going to have a strong case for a 1 if they continue to dominate it like they have been. They beat Xavier really badly the other night. Again, this is a really good Nova team. I think people kind of forgot about how good they were after they went out early last year, but it's the same team, and they've looked awesome this year.
Well, they have looked awesome so far this year, but at the same time, you have to wonder, are they built to win in January and February, or are they going to be built to win in March? Because let's not forget, Seton Hall beat them last year in the Big East Tournament, and the same thing just happened last weekend, albeit at Seton Hall's arena.
Yeah. And then but if you look at them, again, I just think that they have, if you're going by paper, I think they're ahead of Arizona. Would you agree that they're better than Arizona? Well, we just had this discussion, but.
Well, John, what do you think of Villanova versus Arizona?
Well, I would probably say Villanova is going to be the better team offensively, but much like Virginia, Arizona also runs that pack line defense.
Yeah. So.
Well, let's kind of take a look here at these next 4. Arizona, Duke, despite the 2 losses, they desperately need a win. But with actually Duke, we had that big debate, them versus Wisconsin, and Duke won at Wisconsin. That's why Duke is 6, Wisconsin 7. This year.
And they've gone back to their regular can't beat decent teams in true road games since winning at Wisconsin. But yeah, they got a really good profile. And then I really like this Utah team. I know they're off to a bad start tonight, and again, we'll scrub that. Again, I think you like Kansas more, but you were wrong. So that's why Utah's up at number 8.
Utah's up 27-15 right now, so I don't know what you were talking about, a bad start, but
Okay.
Maybe only winning by 12 is a bad start, David.
Yeah, I mean,
The only question I have here is Duke did win at Wisconsin, but why would you not put Arizona over Gonzaga with their head-to-head win, even if it was at Arizona?
I guess it just came down to that. It was at Arizona.
It was at Arizona, and the other thing is you then have to look at the two knocks that Arizona has: a loss to Oregon State and a loss to UNLV. Those are both bad losses. Those are losses to two teams not in the field, and they're not even really close to the field. Gonzaga hasn't lost to a team outside the field, and that's why, despite the head-to-head, I think Arizona's worse right now.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, Arizona, especially with at least 2 games with Utah, maybe 3 if they meet in the Pac-12 tournament, has tons of chances to build that resume a lot better. Gonzaga's best win they'll have the rest of the year would be a home win against BYU or a road win against St. Mary's. Nowhere close to the level of type of win that Arizona has a shot to pick up.
Yeah. Okay, people that are listening to this and not watching, maybe you're in their car, brace yourself because you might have an accident. We have VCU all the way up on the 3 line with Kansas, Louisville, and North Carolina. Chad, talk about that. Why is VCU this high? You like them.
I personally am a huge fan of this VCU. If you look at, let's start by looking at the ratings. Right now, they're 4th in the RPI, 14th in the BPI, 13th in the Ken Palm ratings. Just look at some of their other ratings here. They're among the top. The number 2 strength of schedule in the country right now. Those are all huge, huge numbers. Their losses. They lost to Villanova, who's above them on this list. They lost to Virginia, who's above them on this list. Their 3rd loss was to Old Dominion. Meantime, they have wins over Cincinnati, Davidson, Rhode Island, Northern Iowa.
We love Davidson.
Toledo. I mean, they don't have any wins that just completely blow you away, but everybody they've played has been a good team. They really haven't beaten anybody that's not that good. Their worst win is over a Fordham team that I think is a lot better than their record is.
Fordham's terrible.
Cincinnati plays like the way they did tonight. That may not be a quality win for much longer.
It's still a road victory, and you've got to look also in terms of road victories. They have 2 neutral court wins, 2, 3, 4 true road wins. That's 6 wins away from home. That's another huge factor. I just really think this is a really strong VCU team. All the objective numbers say that they should be right up here, and this is one of those cases where I kind of overlook who they actually beat and say, listen, this team just deserves to be among the top teams in the country and in this protective seed range.
Yeah.
Now, do they really maybe belong on the 4 line? That's an argument I'd accept, but do they belong below the 4 line? No, I don't think they do.
And Chad does this sometimes. He just arbitrarily overlooks who teams actually beat.
Who cares?
Move them up to the 3 line. Anyway.
But the other thing I do is I look at the teams below them, and if you look at North Carolina, Iowa State, Maryland, West Virginia, Wichita State, can you seriously say that any of those teams are absolutely better than VCU?
Well, the discussion we had, I think I liked Maryland, but yeah, to your point, 3 seems excessive. But when you look at the ratings and you look at the paper and you look at the teams behind them, a case could be made. It just seems crazy. Now, if they blow through the Atlantic 10, which has a lot of decent teams in it, but no really strong ones, I mean, if they run the table, which they might, then I think they would end up this high. The human polls are a huge indicator of what the committee does. The actual polls are in the room, and as you know, the NABC rankings, which work the same way the polls do, are in the room. And I think that if they run through this conference and win on the road a lot, they would get a lot of credit for that. But if they end up, I think if it's 14-4, 13-5, something like that, where they win the league but they don't absolutely storm through it, I don't see them this high at all.
Now, in terms of VCU's schedule in the A-10, they have GW home and home. Mm-hmm. They have Dayton at home, and then they have, who is it, Good Davidson on the road?
Yeah.
So no, that'd be Bad Davidson on the road.
Good. Well, Davidson should have been in the bracket, but they're not. Good Davidson. All right.
You mentioned this Maryland team. Let's get this maybe a bit of a segue here down to the 4 line. And my problem with Maryland is, I think it's my entire problem with the Big Ten right now. this conference is just not looking good. And can you really justify two Big Ten teams in the top 12 when you've got a conference where everybody keeps losing?
Well, yeah, Nebraska is taking losing to a whole new level right
Well,
now.
yeah, but
Maryland has been kind of they've been one of the bigger surprises for me this year. I didn't even think they would be a tournament team, much less up on the 3 or the 4 line, which is about where they have them. But they beat a really good. I mean, this is what they've done, and they beat Iowa State away from home, who's really good. We have them. They won at Oklahoma State. Now I know Oklahoma State is a little lower in our ratings, but this is an Oklahoma State team that won't lose too many games at home. They won at Michigan State. Again, not a great team, but it's hard to win there. And they won it never mind. I was about to say they won at Purdue, but that's hardly spectacular.
I still think this Purdue team has more life than we've given them credit for. But
and their losses are Virginia, who's a 1 seed, and at Illinois, who again it's not easy to win there. I mean, I like them more than VCU. I am right, but we've decided to be wrong and put VCU on the 3 line ahead of them.
Well, you also put North Carolina. We also put North Carolina and Iowa State in between them. So
yeah.
And this Iowa State team was a bit of a debate for us as well. I think we both agree this is a really good Iowa State team, but they just haven't come through with a couple of the games. I still can't figure out that loss to South Carolina. That
right.
was one of the more perplexing losses this year for me.
Yeah, in Iowa State, they are one of these teams for the past, I think, 3 seasons to where you're not that excited about them at the beginning of the year, and then they win a few games, and then by mid to late February, they are just on a roll. I think last year, coming down the stretch, they were as good as anyone in the Big 12. They won the Big 12 tournament, and had it not been for the injury, I think they would have gone further than they did. And maybe I'm relating too much on that, what I think they'll do, but by the end of the year, I think this is going to be a very, very dangerous Iowa State team. Fred Hoiberg does an awesome job with them.
But even for the time being, I don't have a problem with North Carolina being above Iowa State for now. They are coming off the win over Louisville at home.
Yeah.
And that's a good point here. That what this list is really is our evaluation of where these teams are now. While we're talking about what they've got coming up, this is a snapshot of where we are right now in the season.
Right. Let's see. West Virginia was another team that we think are good. They have a few decent but not great wins, but no bad losses. And who do you put behind them?
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at a team that's sitting here at 15-2, 3-1 in conference in the Big 12, which top to bottom is the strongest league in basketball. I think that we've got every Big 12 team that's on this list is probably within the top 6 or 7 seed lines. So that just shows you how strong the Big 12 is, and we have 7 out of 10 teams in this from that conference in this field.
Mm-hmm.
I guess we can move on down to the 5 seeds now. Oklahoma, Butler, Notre Dame, and our San Diego State team, the qualifier out of the Mountain West.
Yeah. Now, let's talk Butler. Again, Oklahoma and Butler are kind of all over the map. Oklahoma beat Butler on a neutral floor. They've looked really good at times, but Oklahoma hasn't brought it every single night, and neither has Butler. But I guess we were just really influenced by the paper here, because when Butler has brought it, they have beaten, they've beaten North Carolina, Georgetown, who's okay but not great, and they've beaten, was it St. John? They have essentially 4 wins against ranked teams away from home. That's pretty amazing.
St. John's and now Seton Hall. They have wins on the road.
Yeah. And to have 4 wins like that away from home, 2 of them in true road games, there's just nobody behind them. I mean, when you look at the list here, that's done anything close to that.
If it weren't for Providence winning at Butler would be in the protected seed line.
Right. So 5 might be high. I understand that it's high. I understand a lot of people are going to disagree with that selection, which is odd because no one ever disagrees with the committee ever. But that's why we have them that high. And Oklahoma, I don't know. I can't figure them out. I'll defer to you guys. They're within the same game, you're thinking you're watching one of the better teams you've ever seen, and then between timeouts, they just completely fall apart.
Yeah, I agree with you. This Oklahoma team is one of the few teams in the country that I have zero read on at this point. Just zero read. I mean, they lost that game to Creighton. I thought they stunk. They lost to Washington.
They lost the game to Creighton after building a 20-point lead at Creighton.
Now they lose to K-State at home. And K-State, absolutely. If anybody stinks in the Big 12, K-State does. But yet they won at Texas. They beat Baylor. They beat UCLA back when we thought UCLA was a good team. They've beaten Butler, who we just talked about. So it's team schizophrenia right now. Really.
And I mean, you could have them. I mean, you could make a strong case that they should be lower, but when you look at the paper, they have the wins, and that's what the committee has valued: quality wins and road wins. Notre Dame has a lot of wins, but they have a lot of wins against crappy teams. They have been playing really well, though. I really like this Notre Dame team. I really think they shortchanged themselves with their out-of-conference schedule. It's like, why would you schedule teams that are that pathetic, so many of them, when you had it? They could have made a better case for themselves. They were certainly good enough.
Well, sorry, John, go ahead.
I was going to say, even the other day, they did survive at Georgia Tech, which is not always an easy place to play.
Not this year, it hasn't been. Yeah. Right.
That's more than I can say for other teams.
Yeah.
But I'll give Notre Dame this. I mean, some of their non-conference games included Florida State, which we thought would be a good game going into the season. They included Michigan
Notre
State.
Dame's a conference game. Or Florida State's a conference game.
Well, okay, yeah, but it shouldn't be because Notre Dame's in the Big East, aren't they?
Oh, yeah, that's right, yeah.
But UMass, who has been underperforming this year, Providence, which was one of their losses. Michigan State. And how were they really supposed to know that Fairleigh Dickinson was going to be this awful?
Yeah, who didn't see that coming? Centenary candidate.
Have UMass in the American Conference now? I'm sure there's a place waiting for them in there.
They might. You might know something about that because, I mean, they might want to get in there for football reasons. They're at 11 now. That would put them at 12. Which would give them a championship game. Are they looking at UMass?
It's not quite true because Navy's coming into the American next year for football only, which will put the American at 12 in football.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
But UMass actually is in the MAC, in the Mid-American for football, but they had part of their deal is that the MAC, if the MAC ever offered them full membership in all sports and they refused, they had to be out within 2 years. And the MAC did offer that to UMass last year. UMass said no. So next season, I believe it will be UMass's last in the MAC for football. So they are going to need a new home for football. And if somebody does defect out of the American to another conference at some point here, I think UMass would be a great choice for the American.
Yeah, and it's going to be harder for them to build a schedule. I know Notre Dame and BYU are football independents. I said we'd go off on a tangent. Notre Dame and BYU also have lucrative television deals, which makes them appealing to schedule. UMass does not. So they would have a horrible time. Army, Navy, I don't know who else they could play. It would be hard to put a schedule together for them as an independent.
I do not know what I just did there. Somehow those 4 teams got moved aside. Just ignore that, and we'll move on to the next 4.
Chad, we can't.
You put me in charge of the computers, and this is what happens. But the next 4 teams up: Seton Hall, St. John's, Baylor, Iowa.
I really like these. I am really, again, I said this about Maryland. I am shocked with this Seton Hall team. I mean, I thought they were just going to be also-rans in the league. They played really well out of conference and bloated their record out, but you were like, once they get into the conference, they get buried. They haven't been. This is a really, really surprising Seton Hall team. Kevin Willard, we were talking about this last night. There are some fantastic coaches in this conference that are doing really well. You've got Kevin Willard at Seton Hall, who's really turned them around. You've got Chris Holtman at Butler, who took over a really rough situation, has them rolling. And again, you got Steve Lavin, another surprise team, at least for us, because we thought the Johnnies would be terrible. He has the Johnnies into the rankings. So this is a tough Big East this year.
Now, Seton Hall is also missing a freshman Isaiah Whitehead out of their lineup for the past few games.
Yeah.
I mean, when he becomes healthy, they'll become even more formidable down the stretch.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. So, and again, overcoming the injuries. Who is, since we have Big East on this, who is the coach of the year in the Big East right now?
Probably would say Holtman, just
Yeah.
for the simple reason that they've exceeded their expectations so far.
Mm-hmm.
And you throw the fact that he wasn't even the head coach, at least technically at the start of the season, although I think that the school knew from day one that he would be the head coach all year.
Yeah. John, do you know anything about that? Being in Big East country, has that been a topic of discussion? Why did Chris Holtman go to Butler to be an assistant when he was such a hot commodity with what he was doing at Gardner-Webb, and then all of a sudden a year later he's the head guy? That just seemed crazy.
I'm not an insider as far as why Butler would hire him at the time, but Butler seems to be one of those schools that just when you think they're going to be down permanently, they find a way to rise back to the top. Same can be said for other programs like West Virginia and Temple. Even after some off years, they've had some nice comeback seasons this year.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, we thought it was the weirdest hire, and maybe even when the hire happened last year, there was some idea there in the administration that, hey, Holtman, you come and coach as an assistant here. Within a year or two, you're going to be our head coach.
Otherwise, why would he have gone there?
He was doing really well at Gardner-Webb. It was kind of a lateral move to go from the head coach of a up-and-coming team in a smaller conference to an assistant at a slightly more major school.
Yeah. I mean, had he left Gardner-Webb to go to Duke as an assistant, I would have thought it strange. But I don't know. Anyway.
We're going to scroll down here, pick up a few more teams on the screen.
Yeah.
And
Iowa. Let's talk Iowa real quick, because that was another team we didn't really know what to do with. They have really good wins, but they've also a team that doesn't bring it every night. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, but I think when you look at the quality of the wins that Iowa does have, that more than makes up for the failings that they've had. And I mean, this might be surprising that Iowa is just safely in the field right now, but this team has won at Ohio State, has won at North Carolina. Those two wins alone are as maybe one of the better pairs of wins of anybody that's in the field right now.
Yeah, and again, that's why you kind of see them this high. So
a pair of road wins to boot.
Yeah. Okay.
Moving on down here to the next four teams. This is the what would be, I guess, the seven line in the field: Northern Iowa, Oklahoma State, Arkansas, and Miami.
Yeah. And you look at this 7 line. I really like these are strong 7 seeds. Northern Iowa, I think, is really good. I don't know what their ceiling is. I mean, winning out would mean they beat Wichita twice, and if they do that, they're certainly going to be higher than this. Outside of that, I just don't know if they have the opportunity to get much higher. But this is a very dangerous Northern Iowa team. I think this Oklahoma State team's better than this. It's just that the paper isn't there right now, but as they go through conference play, I think it will be. Arkansas has actually won 2 road games this year, which is 2 more than they've won for the past 10 years combined or something like that.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. So, again, I mean, if they can win, I mean, even just being able to beat NIT teams on the road is a huge upgrade for them. And then Miami, what do you do with a team that gets curb stomped at home by Eastern Kentucky, who is looking like a middle-of-the-pack Ohio Valley team, but then goes and curb stomps Duke at Duke? I don't know. What do you do with them?
I gotta say, we talked about this last night a little bit during Under the Radar, although it wasn't in the non-Under the Radar section, I guess.
Yeah.
But that win, Miami at Duke, probably just the way the win happened too. Probably the most impressive win of anybody all season.
Yeah.
Even beating now Duke's win at Wisconsin.
Right.
And they also should have had an impressive win at Florida earlier in the year, but the Gators so far have been underwhelming this season.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll probably be talking about Florida when we get down to our NIT bubble teams. But
yeah.
Next 4 teams here. These are our 8 seeds. Texas, who how the mighty have fallen, I guess. Texas, we were looking at as being a top 2 or 3 seed just about 2 weeks ago. The bottom is starting to fall out on Rick Barnes' program there.
Right, and again, Rick Barnes, his presence is really being felt. A super talented Texas team that is playing like an 8 or a 9 seed.
They've lost at home to Stanford, at home to Oklahoma, and at Oklahoma State since December 23rd. Only getting wins against Rice and Texas Tech. And now, if you look for quality wins on their resume, they won at UConn, and we're going to be talking about UConn in a little bit and whether they even belong in the field right now. And they have a neutral court win against Iowa. That's it.
Yeah.
But all UConn has to do is get in the field. We saw what happened last year. From the 7 line.
But right now, if you look at this Texas resume, and they have 1 win against a team that's legitimately in this field, and that's not a 2 or 3 seed resume. That's a 8 or 9 seed resume.
Yeah. Old Dominion. This is not. I mean, this is so far inside the bubble. It indicates they're a first ballot team. I know Old Dominion got into the rankings and had a cup of coffee, and I know, again, they lost the other night, kind of a surprise, at Western Kentucky. But Western Kentucky, while not a tournament team and maybe not even an NIT team, is still very hard to beat at home. So I don't think they're going to lose any more games other than perhaps Louisiana Tech, who can be good when they want to be but doesn't always want to be. I think they belong on this line. They've beaten LSU away from home. They beat VCU, who we really like, at home. And they really don't have any bad losses. I don't think, when you look at it in its totality, that losing at Western Kentucky, who will probably only lose 2 or 3 games at home all year, as being that bad of a loss.
Has Old Dominion played Texas El Paso yet?
No, they have not.
Could trip them up in Conference USA.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think even more dangerous is going to be when they play Louisiana Tech. Because I think Louisiana Tech is the second best team on paper in that conference, even though the resumes favor UTEP.
Yeah. You mean on the court?
On the court.
What has happened to them? Oh man, what a disappointment.
John, our next 2 teams here on this line here, a Big East team and an Ohio team, both right up your alley. What are your takes on both these teams, Georgetown and Ohio State?
Well, I got to see Georgetown in person on December 31st, so at least for that night when Xavier was playing at home, it was going to be
sorry, I was just getting the drink
for Georgetown. But as for Ohio State, what's surprising here is that this is probably the weakest out-of-conference schedule I've seen in the Thad Matta era, which leads me to wonder, was this Thad Matta, or was this a higher-up that was looking for a weaker schedule that also had a few more in-state teams being scheduled?
And we've talked about this earlier this year. It was a weak Ohio State team. The schedule wasn't the worst we've ever seen. I mean, it was not Louisiana Tech or Davidson or Utah State or these, SMU, TCU, these teams that just get out there and play absolutely no one. But like John said, Thad Matta, ever since he started at Butler, he's always, like at Butler in the few years he was at Xavier, and then Ohio State, this is a team that really did seek out and want to play a lot of tough teams out of conference. This year they really didn't, and I think it has hurt them.
Yeah, and if you look at it, they're only 2 games away from home non-conference, where the game at Louisville, which was part of the ACC Big Ten Challenge, and a game against North Carolina that was also part of the CBS Sports Classic, I think it was those were both made-for-TV events that they were in. Every other game they played non-conference was a home game. I don't even know if that it was because in-state, they only played 2 in-state teams, Wright State and Miami of Ohio. The rest of their games, UMass Lowell, Sacred Heart, Campbell,
Yeah,
Colgate, High Point, North Carolina A&T, Morehead State. That's
I mean, with the
ridiculous.
exception of High Point, those aren't just teams from weak leagues. Those are teams from weak leagues that will do poorly in those weak leagues. I mean, really poor scheduling, and it has hurt them. Sorry, Chad, I cut you off. Well, I'm not sorry for cutting you off, but go ahead.
Well, I didn't get to mention Marquette, who's also a weak team they played at home. But
Yes. Oh, zing!
But all for different reasons.
yeah, I can't fault them for scheduling Marquette, but the rest of that schedule is not what you do. Go out and play 1 or 2 games on the road, or at least get somebody better in there. Get a team from the American, get a team from the Big East in here. Don't get this list, which means, hey, why don't you go out and schedule Dayton? Why don't you go out and schedule Cincinnati? Why don't you go out and schedule
Cincinnati? God, they got to get that started.
why don't you schedule Xavier?
Yeah, that would be.
Where are those teams on your schedule? Ohio State,
right? But
Well,
anyway,
Dayton was on Ohio State's schedule last year, albeit at the very end.
yeah.
Moving on down to our 9 line. Speaking of Dayton, we have Dayton right in there along with NC State, Providence, and SMU. SMU are automatic qualifier out of the American.
Yeah. Again, NC State has just done a 180. I know they didn't win last night, but they've certainly played better this last week and a half than they have at any point, maybe in the last 2 years. Just they had the big, really, really surprising win against Duke. Was it Duke?
It was Duke on Sunday.
And then they took North Carolina to the wall last night. So, and again, I'm not that big on this NC State team. This is higher than where I would have put them, but when you look at the paper, it makes a little bit of sense.
Let me mention that this SMU team here. This is one of the moves that I campaigned for here. When we discussed the American, we discussed who their best team is in there. Just last night, they went out. They won at Temple. They only have 1 loss in conference. It was their loss at Cincinnati. They've also picked up. They have a home win over Wyoming team. They have a home win over UC Santa Barbara. They won at Michigan. Not a great win, but it is still a solid road victory. I just think that we kind of all wrote off this SMU team early this season when they started off 2-3, and they've only lost 1 since then. They also did beat Texas Southern at home, which is something that Michigan State can't do.
Nor Kansas State.
Nor can Kansas State, absolutely. I think this SMU team is finally starting to play the way I thought they would play. If they need an at-large bid, they're probably going to be there, but if they can keep winning, if they suffer more than a couple losses the rest of the way, they might need to win the conference tournament, though, still.
Yeah.
The other 2 teams here we just mentioned, Dayton, we already spoke about, Providence, but I guess we can move on down to our 10 line.
How about Dayton this year, getting it done with just a very thin bench. I just wanted to mention this real quick. I mean, I think everyone was amazed with Dayton's Elite Eight run last year, and it was, but I think from a coaching standpoint, I was not that big on Archie Miller prior to the Elite Eight run. But this year, I think with his coaching, I think I'm actually more impressed with what he's done this year so far with all of the setbacks and all of the injuries and a weak front court than I am with their Elite Eight run, because part of that involved beating a Syracuse team, which was in the process of losing 6 out of 9, and then beating a Stanford team that just was a horrible matchup for Stanford. So what they've done this year is pretty incredible, I think.
And that's with a 7-man rotation, I think. One who is a walk-on right now.
Yeah. The problem that Dayton has is with that short of a team, I don't think they have any shot at winning the A10 tournament. You try to win 3 games in 3 days, or maybe 4 in 4 days, depending on where they end up seated in the tournament.
Right. I don't think I don't
know that they can advance very far in the NCAA tournament.
I don't expect them to. In fact, I don't expect them to get out of the round of 64. I'm just saying that, like, despite not being as good or going as far, I'm actually more impressed with Archie Miller this year than I am last year. That's all.
All right. Our next line here is just the 10 line that we're on, I believe.
Yes.
Stanford, Syracuse, George Washington, and Michigan State.
It's getting busted.
GW barely survived Richmond in overtime tonight.
GW's barely survived a lot of games against crap teams. They barely survived against St. Louis about a week ago, but yet they keep winning. And they did win the Diamond Head Classic. I think that's really that's what we keep going back to. But outside of the Diamond Head Classic, even though they've won, they haven't looked that good on the court.
Well, Wichita State on a neutral floor, that's going to be one of their keystone wins for the year.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
And that's why this GW team is there. They actually they lost to LaSalle over the weekend also.
Yeah.
But just they have a loss to Penn State. But that Wichita State win really is carrying them right now. But I think it's deservedly carrying them at this point because they are finding ways to sneak out wins. They play at VCU January 27th. Should be a pretty interesting game there.
Yeah, big old Colonial rivalry renewed.
How about this Michigan State team?
Oh, do we have to? Yeah.
They have.
Take it away, Chad. I'll let you talk about it.
What can we say about this? I mean, first of all, you start by looking at their numbers there. They're sitting at 35 in the RPI, 20 in the Ken Palms. You would think that would be a slam dunk team that's in the field. Then you look at who they've beaten, and other than the win at Iowa last week, I don't know that they would have even been in this field today.
Yeah, I mean, they beat Indiana, who's also in the field, albeit barely. But, I mean, who was it? Was it Kyle or somebody said he didn't think Michigan State would make the field this year? That's looking more and more true to fact. Santa Barbara's, we're not down there yet. They're sweating out Northridge, by the way. Really weak. Okay. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, the best thing I can say about Michigan State with 5 losses, other than the Texas Southern loss, their other losses are Duke, Kansas, Notre Dame, Maryland, all teams well above them on this list here, so you can't really fault any of those losses. They're going to need some big wins. They're at Maryland this weekend, huge game. They come up with that win, then they feel safe. They lose it. They're going to be sitting right here on the bubble every week as we go forward.
And this is really this is really where good Davidson should be instead of.
While we're in the Big Ten, next 2 teams up right here start off the 11 line: Illinois and Indiana, along with LSU team that kind of surprised me in making this field, and Colorado State.
Yeah. Colorado State with the bloated record and a smattering of notable wins, but I don't even think anything rises to the level of good with them. But still, I think they would be in the field. I like this LSU team obviously more than you do. They've won at West Virginia, and I know that they've had some setbacks, but I mean that's more than Indiana or Illinois has really done, or Michigan State, or I mean I would have them higher, honestly.
Really?
Yeah.
You know that they did lose to Clemson and to Missouri.
Well, you know, Frank Hayes not at Missouri anymore, so it wasn't that bad.
I don't know. Missouri might want Frank Haith back right now.
Now I think I know why Missouri and Kansas aren't playing anymore.
Well, they should be playing. They should be playing. I mean, we need to put Missouri in the field to make that game happen.
Hopefully when they're competitive again.
Our next 4 teams, you can see 2 of them on the screen already, are the first 4 teams. These are our last 4 at-large teams. Temple and Xavier are the first 2 there. John, what do you think about this Xavier team? Do you think they belong in the field at this point, or do you think that we grossly overrated them?
At this point, they probably would be in this spot, which is also where they were last year, because even though they only have 2 wins away from home, they still have a smattering of decent wins at Cintas, Seton Hall, Georgetown, I suppose SFA and Florida Gulf Coast if you're looking at other future
Murray, yeah.
teams.
Long Beach also.
Yeah.
I should also add that if Temple and Xavier play in the first 4, that's going to be Temple's biggest home crowd of the year.
This is something that I mean that isn't really well known. There is I wouldn't call it a big rivalry in terms of national importance, but the Xavier Dayton rivalry back in the Atlantic 10 days was pretty heated. I don't know if it was as heated as Cincinnati. It may have been at times. Xavier loved picking on Dayton, and they really hated it, and they never really got over it. It was, especially the games at Dayton, it was a show when those two played. Am I wrong about that, John, or would you agree?
No, you're correct.
Yeah.
I've been to, I think, about 2 or 3 different Xavier Dayton games up at the arena.
Yeah. And last year, because the Dayton hosts the first four, as we all know, they came out in mass to root against Xavier. It was something.
And that was NC State. Temple is actually, not that bad of well, I guess it's a bit of a drive, but I still think it would be easy. Temple fans would come out to that game even more than NC State fans would.
Right, and Dayton fans would come out even more than Temple fans.
Yeah.
I mean, it really was something to see.
And then finally, our big reveal: the last two teams that we did have in. Here we are: Wyoming and South Carolina.
Okay. Scroll down a little bit. I can't see. Yeah, there we go. Okay.
Right up top there, Wyoming and South Carolina.
Angry Frank is in the field.
Angry Frank, we put in the field just barely. That win over Iowa State, that's what I keep coming back to on this team. They're sitting there at 10-5. They also up. I mean, they need something to do something on the road. They lost at Ole Miss. They lost at home to Florida. They picked up a home win against Alabama, but they really need some more road wins. But that neutral court win against Iowa State and a home court win against Oklahoma State are as good as anybody else that's below them right now, I think.
Yeah. Now, I've seen Wyoming play a couple times. This is a team whose RPI and most of the Ken Palm is really low. They did get into the human polls, albeit they're probably going to be out of them next week because they just lost at home to San Diego State. What is it about this Wyoming team? Now, they have won. I think their best win was probably the win at Colorado State, which is carrying them. But their style of play makes you want to pour acid in your eyes. It's painful to watch this team. I mean, people complain about Bo Ryan at Wisconsin. I like watching that. This Wyoming team, it's almost a chore to get through their games.
Have you seen San Diego State in that conference?
Yeah, that was the Wyoming-San Diego State game. If you missed it last night, don't worry.
Yeah, well, it wasn't as bad as last year's Pittsburgh-Cincinnati game, but nothing will ever be that bad.
Oh, wow. That one is enshrined in the Hall of Fame.
No, Pittsburgh and Colorado.
Yeah.
I mean, Cincinnati had another challenge of their own against Harvard, I think.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Just by way of, as you're looking at this screen here, looking down, there are a lot more teams that are listed on here that are in lowercase. These are teams that actually would not be in the field right now but are still on the bubble. The teams that you see in capital letters are our automatic qualifiers who would be in the field right now.
Yeah.
Let's kind of run through some of these teams that are not in the field.
Georgia needs to win on the road. They only have one home loss. They've looked really good. They're much improved, but they need to win on the road. I mean, they at least need to beat the bad teams that they play on the road.
And how about drum roll, please? The defending champions by 3 teams are not in the field as of the moment after suffering a loss at Tulsa last night.
Yeah, they have lost to Yale. They have lost to Tulsa. They have just lost. What is their best win? Florida?
I think their best win is the loss at Florida, and you can see Florida's down there at 63, way below them right now.
Yeah. That is, I am really surprised at the year UConn has had. I really thought this was a top 25 caliber team, and they might miss the tournament entirely. In fact, I think they would if it started today.
Their best when they did beat Dayton. That's probably their best.
Oh, that's right. They did in one of the. Was it? What? I forget what tournament
it was. In Puerto Rico, I think.
Puerto Rico, yeah. Okay, yeah, that one is fairly good because they won it away from home too. So.
And they actually have an interesting game. They're at Stanford this weekend in a non-conference game, kind of a strange little mid-January non-conference game here.
They sought that out. Now, Stanford has done that before too, but UConn, I guess, not being in the Big East like they used to be, they wanted a marquee game in the middle of conference play, which is a real indictment on what they think of the rest of the Americans. So they sought out Stanford. And I think Kevin Ollie wants to continue to do that, have a big game on the schedule late January, early February. You don't see that very often. I don't mind it as much. But I don't know. Sometimes it is kind of disruptive to get out of your natural conference rivalry game to play an out-of-conference game. But they're in the American. They have no natural conference rival, so I guess it's all right.
Quick note here, in terms of, I guess, a little bit under the radar note here. Green Bay at 52 lost tonight at Oakland. After we spent last night saying how wonderful this team was, they promptly went and laid an egg.
And this is a bad Oakland team. I mean, when I say bad Oakland team, I mean bad by Horizon League standards. It's not the kind of game an at-large caliber team needs to be losing. And we thought Green Bay was. I mean, had we won this game, we would have probably had them inside the bubble, maybe even ahead of the first four. I mean, we really like this team, but what is it? We saw this out of Green Bay last year. I mean, 85 to 90% of the time, they are really good, but on their off nights, oh my God, are they off?
Also, since we started this broadcast, Oregon State lost at Washington. The only reason they were on that list is because we felt if they won that game, they merited some consideration. So we can kind of
you can go ahead
just
and
delete them. Just pretend they're not there.
What's happened to Washington since they won the DirecTV Classic?
They've lost to just about everybody since.
Yeah, I mean, Washington, I did a bracket earlier this year where I think that had them on the 3-seed line. And right now, if they lose to Stony Brook, then they lose to Cal, which Cal looks like they are completely awful this year. Lose to Stanford, then they lose at home to Washington State. The team is imploded.
At home to Wazoo. I mean, Wazoo is much improved, which means they have elevated their status to mostly sucks.
I mean, Washington does still have 2 good wins. They beat San Diego State at home. They have a win over Oklahoma. That was a game in Las Vegas. But with those 3 really bad losses on there, I don't think they're a tournament team right now. I think they're out.
Yeah, I agree.
Anyone else? Let's kind of scroll down a little bit lower here. John, coming in at number 64, we see the Cincinnati Bearcats, also a team that has right below them Tulsa. I know that you're a big fan of that team.
That was before or after Cincinnati lost to Memphis tonight?
This was after. After Cincinnati's lost tonight, we did drop them down. They would have, had they won this game tonight at Memphis, I think they would have been pretty close to the bubble. Yeah. Maybe not in, but close. They do have a win over SMU. They do have the win at NC State. They do have a win over San Diego State. But now with losses to Nebraska, UConn, Memphis, this Memphis team stinks. I'm sorry.
Oh my God, it's awful.
Cincinnati is going to be another one of the teams that will like to keep the games in the 40s and 50s since they don't have too many offensive threats at this point, but are still one of the top defensive teams in the country.
Yeah.
What else do we looking also down here? The very last team that we even considered on our bubble was Alabama because that team at 71 does not belong there.
Davidson, yeah, I know they don't belong there. They belong up in the 40s or 30s.
Bad Davidson.
Good. Davidson's getting it. I am going to laugh my ass off when Davidson makes the field.
We spoke about most of the bomb teams here during the End of the Radar podcast. Just to note here, Texas Southern, we felt that they were above the first 4, as with North Carolina Central. I did a little research since last night, confirmed that since the field went to 65 teams in 2001, only that first play-in game in 2001 did not involve a team from either the MEAC or the SWAC in it.
That's incredible.
Every one of those 2 conferences has put a team in a play-in game or in a first 4 game ever since then. If NC Central and Texas Southern both win out and get their bids this year, we feel that they can avoid the first 4.
Yeah.
Even getting above the 16 line, I think you have to go back to, what is it, 2000 or 1999?
It was Alcorn State in 1999. Was the last time the SWAC avoided a 16 seed or worse. You remember, and this is a super hyper technicality that only people like us know. When it went to 65, there actually was the 17 line. The 65th team was a 17th seed technically. So yeah, it did exist.
The final team in the field, Florida A&M. I know we're going to get a little trouble with that because they are on the APR ban list this year, but we put them on our consideration anyhow.
Yes, and the reason for that, Chad, why?
Because they are the worst team in college basketball this season. Yeah. This team, I think we mentioned this before, I don't believe they even had more than one or two scholarship players on their roster in the middle of August. Yeah. The APR ban list and everything fell apart, and I'm getting some type of error message on my screen here, so that might be the end of.
Okay, we can still hear you. Well, we don't need the list anymore. So.
Okay, all right. So we're gonna see if the list will disappear. Maybe I'll come back, and maybe I won't.
Hey!
Whoa, hey! All right. Yeah. Okay, so where do we go from here?
Well, I don't know. I guess we're done talking about it.
Oh, so. We're done talking. Yeah, what we are going to do is we're going to take this list that we just went over and check on the website tomorrow. We'll actually have a new bracket up with this list in this order. We'll get that built sometime tonight or tomorrow morning.
Yeah, by the time you're watching this, it will probably already be built. And again, like we do this sort of differently every week. We can't decide how we like doing it, so we always switch it up. What we're going to start doing, at least probably mid to late February and early in the March, is what we did last year, where we actually come in and debate each line and build the bracket. The only reason we're not doing that now is because that takes about an hour and a half, which is way too damn long to spend on something like this in January.
Yeah, in fact, the fact that anybody will put a bracket together this early is, why would they bother?
Well, because people look, it drives the traffic.
Here we are insulting ourselves. Okay.
Yeah. Nice going, Chad. Like, way to insult our audience. All 10 of them.
Hey, we had a huge new group of people join our forums this week. I want to give a shout out to all these Europeans that joined our forums this week. Probably about 250 of them.
Yeah. Oh man.
Let's not shortchange our friends from Canada either.
You're right. Yeah.
I never knew how much American college basketball.
Oh, huge! All throughout Hungary and Austria and all these people joining. Yeah. So big shout out to them.
Yeah, we're going to be taking care of something over there in the forums with because somehow we got out there in a little bit of spam traffic, but we'll get that resolved. Don't worry. But with that, any final comments? John, we'll start with you.
Don't have any other comments at this point, but.
Okay.
All right.
I think I need a drink too.
I thought we were off. Okay.
David, any final thoughts or anything you're looking forward to the next couple of days here?
No, just again, I mean, any Saturday during conference play or during college basketball is a huge Saturday. And just again, this is what we just went through. It's a forecast. It's not a forecast. It's just a checkpoint. Next week it'll be completely different. And Davidson belongs in the field.
Well, with that, and with the fact that Davidson is not in the field, nor will they be in the field, even if they deserve to be in the field, I'm not going to allow them to be in a field at all this season. Because
how come you just get to arbitrarily make changes to the brackets?
That's because I've got the edit controls right here, and the mute button.
Yeah.
So with that, thanks again for everybody tuning in, and we'll talk to you again real soon. David won't, though. He's on mute.